Alright, got 30 minutes left on the camera, so we'll see how much of this video we can get through. Apropos of wet snow. It's made it 3 parts. I haven't watched the first 2 parts. I thought I figured we'd just get to the end here and see what his conclusion is, but I couldn't even get to the end of the video without just saying, fuck this shit. I would ask that Gary not respond with point, stop, and respond method. Well, you know, you can ask. Sorry. No, I would ask that you would respond to one of my videos with that method or something similar to that method, or at least answer the direct questions asked in my videos. That might be worthwhile. Like, you know, what do you do about this dilemma of the unneeded need? Okay, why would you create a need that doesn't need to exist? Why would you wound somebody so you need to put a band-aid on their wound, right? Just don't wound them and you don't need a band-aid. Not that complicated. Deal with those issues. Take my last video on antinatalism, the summation video. There's basically 3 arguments, I think, in that video. Just answer one of them. Answer all 3 of them. But, you know, do something relevant to my argument instead of this mischaracterization of my argument and telling me I've got to accept a bunch of false premises and take your video as a whole. What's the point? The whole is incredibly flawed because it's built out of crap. It's built out of false, wrong premises. What's the point of that? You know I'm going to argue with your conclusion, and the only way I can argue with your conclusion is to point out how its structure is flawed. I can't complain about the 15th floor without complaining about everything underneath it. Damn it. I mean, come on.
Alright, I've touched on 2 points in this antinatalism debate. The first being this ability for man to reason and to apply that reason inwardly onto his own emotional state, onto his own affective drives, and how that ability at the same time imbues him with a kind of emotional responsibility. If he's feeling worthless and that life is nothing but shit, he has the responsibility to take over and take control and turn that suffering into something pleasurable.
You know, I'm sorry. Right here is just a false premise. That's not his responsibility. I'm arguing that the first responsibility, the ultimate responsibility, is to the truth. Okay, so yeah, argue with that premise. You tell me how that's a false premise, that the truth doesn't matter, that it's more important that you're fucking comfortable or happy or you have the right smiley face, the right emoticon. Okay, you have the right emoticon, you know, on your fucking face. Right? And you're going to order that based on how you think we're supposed to function, which is feel good. Okay? Don't think good. Don't think accurately. No, just feel good. Alright? Stupid premise, false premise, nonsense premise. Fuck you, jackass. There. I'm done with that one. Get on to the next one.
In ways that are possible even today. The second thing I addressed was this responsibility issue where people like Gary and Metamorphes have been suggesting through a stretch of logic, in my opinion, that the act of conceiving is somehow responsible or somehow the cause of all the suffering that goes on in the lives of the descendants. For me...
Oh, whatever. The descendants. We know that the first generation is quite obvious. You know that if you have a baby, oh yeah, the baby will grow up to be a human being. It's not a stretch of logic or a sense of responsibility to say, you know, if you have a kid, he grows up to be a human being and he will experience a life of pain and pleasure. And obviously, if you didn't have the baby, he wouldn't be experiencing a life of pain and pleasure. And so if he ends up beating his wife, well, yeah, you also got to be accountable for that. You know, it's sort of like, yeah, you're bad. You made a boo-boo somewhere. You created a monster and set it loose on the world. You know, you're making some kind of idiotic argument. Okay, maybe I won't blame Dr. Frankenstein for the 400th generation of Frankenstein. You know, where Frankenstein has a kid and his kid and his kid and kid. Okay, so yeah, maybe we can find some place out there where, okay, it's no longer Frankenstein's fault because the thing itself has its own engine. Alright, but we know the first Frankenstein is his. Jesus Christ.
I suggested that if you do take to that line of reasoning, you have to accept it in other realms, in the realm of tort law. I am going to wave my hand in the air and change the direction of the wind right now. The butterfly effect is going
to... whatever. There's absolutely...
kick in at that moment.
There's absolutely no even plausible, indirectly assertable implication to doing this. Okay, there's just no way to tie that to the murder that might happen 3 blocks down the street. Okay, no fucking way for a person to know, to have any understanding of that connection between cause and effect. Okay, so you can't take responsibility for a cause and effect chain that you can't see. You can see the cause and effect chain between of having a kid. That cause and effect chain is not under any kind of doubt. There's no confusion or fog. Okay, it is quite the fuck obvious. Alright, if I throw darts at rats, okay, and I hit one of them, there's absolutely no disconnect between my action and the fact that there's now a dart in a rat's ass. Alright? And I have to be responsible for that. So this is just bullshit. You're just playing fucking goddamn games here. This is the premise of your fucking argument.
Cause a hurricane in 1,000 years. I probably did cause a hurricane right there in 1,000 years. Am I responsible for that hurricane? No.
You can't be legally held accountable again, because now you can just say, in spite of what the law says, ignorance is an excuse. Okay, especially especially let's just say you could just plead the insanity defense. You could just plead the I didn't know defense. Again, most crimes have tied to them intent. Okay, and how could you possibly have an intent? Did you intend to cause a hurricane? Did you negligently know that a hurricane was very likely in 10 years because you waved your hand? No. So obviously you couldn't be held accountable for it. But let's not deny the fact that there is an absolute fact to our existence, that we do change the world that we live in. We marry somebody, that means they won't marry somebody else. There's a whole chain of fucking goddamn impact that we have. And it's just idiotic to say you didn't do it. We do it. Whether or not we can be held, we can be shot because of it, is completely different than the fact of what we can be held liable for and what we could know ahead of time. And again, to sit there and connect procreation to hurricanes created 10 years from now is as ludicrous a premise to start off your argument with as you can't get much sillier than this. This is just such nonsense. They are not comparable events. They're not comparable actions. It's a stupid analogy.
Act and a condition, okay? And we need to draw the boundaries in a reasonable place. And I don't think it has been drawn in a reasonable place when you say that sex is creating all that is ever bad.
I don't even know why you use the word sex. Again, where in my videos do I blame sex? Procreation is not sex. I'm sorry, yes, you procreate in most cases through sex, but there's a lot of people who procreate without sex nowadays. That's just a fact. Procreation is a separate, deliberate, willful act from sex. We've made that separation. We've invented the technology to quite emphatically create that separation. You can make that separation permanent and decisive, okay, by choice. So let's not play this game again. You can assign the risk. You can be perfectly knowledgeable of the risk. You can know exactly what the risk is.
Okay? Okay. The point of this video is to talk about this risk argument. This calculus, this equation that Gary seems to have set out, where he says that the risk is just too great through the act of sex, for us to go through with it, right? There may be pleasurable experiences, but the risk is on the side of suffering,
No, the risk is on the side of imposition. Again, you're just going to ignore the argument. I believe both arguments, okay? But deal with the stronger argument, which is that you are assigning risk to somebody who never signed a contract, okay? And you're taking on that authority. You're basically saying, I know you're going to like it, and if you don't like it, tough shit. That's the bullshit here, is the imposition, okay? The second argument I'm going to make is that we can, yes, in the world we can see it, that we climb trivial mountains for preposterously silly rewards, and we can find all kinds of people that we find laughably imbecilic. in their risk-reward equations that they have going on in their silly fucktarded heads. They do insanely stupid. They put big giant tires on trucks and bounce over moguls, for Christ's sakes. They do all kinds of preposterously silly nonsense for some sort of silly glory reward. I'm the greatest sticker of a stick into my eye guy. Yeah, that's probably a show. Stick a stick in your eye guy. Yeah, the reality show. It's going to be coming to a wacky TV station near you soon.
A child has a 1 in 2 chance of being born into this world. Growing up in a pile of shit and catching typhoid or whatever kind of disease you want to say. Okay, well, first I would like to just qualify. I wish Gary would qualify this argument a little bit more and sort of maybe talk about it within the terms of, risk for who? Because, if Rupert Murdoch or Bill Gates decides to have a kid, what is the risk that kid is going to be born into a life of suffering as opposed to...
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've made the... Do I have to do all the research? Why don't you do it? All right? But there's lots of celebrity kids who commit suicide. They have a higher rate of suicide, I'm pretty damn sure. Okay? Lots of rich people are as neurotic and psychotic as they come. Okay? We just go look up the Getty family. Lunatics. Absolute fucking lunatics. And I'm sure the Rothschilds are as wacky as they come, too. So this money thing doesn't guarantee sanity, it doesn't guarantee happiness, it doesn't guarantee any of that shit because it's a want-chase game and they just end up wanting and chasing things that are even more preposterous because they have all the basics. They look at Hearst, for Christ's sakes. All the money in the world and he had to keep chasing possessions, things, disgusting. He didn't make the world happy. He didn't buy $10 smiles in Africa. No, he raped the rest of the world, stole all their stuff to put into his little magic castle. And he was the most miserable piece of shit on the planet, pretty much. So it just doesn't work out that way. Rosebud and all, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, and what? You think Bill Gates is immune to ALS? You think he can't, wealth gives you immunity to elephant man disease? I don't think so. It gives you immunity to cancer. The guy who owns Apple is dying of, fucking pancreatic cancer. And yes, with his money, he's kept himself alive a lot longer than the average person, but he's pretty much fucked,
Pleasure. Not that great. So you're generalizing this risk equation to maybe the human species? I don't know what population, what cat, or what groupings of individuals you're...
Yeah, well, whatever. Look, you can't figure it out that it's no fun to be 6 years old and have chemotherapy, then you're not getting it. All right, and it's certainly no fun to grow up, gain a little bit of intelligence, and say, where the hell am I in here? What are these fucktards doing? Okay, you're living on a monkey planet full of assholes who think they can solve their problems with nuclear bombs. I mean, please. You don't see that you don't really have a right to lay eggs in a shitty nest? You can't figure out that if a bird laid its eggs in a cesspool, that the bird judge could say, you're one dumb fucking bird, and you really shouldn't be laying eggs, because that's no fucking place to leave them, asshole.
You're applying this logic to, because it changes depending on who you're talking about. Okay? That's the first thing I want to say.
Says you, okay? I don't care what popular opinion is. I don't care that most people will write on a survey, my life good, my life good. Okay? You get a retard to say anything. I'm making a philosophical argument. You can either argue it or ignore it. But don't pretend that I have some obligation to concede that because some asshole says, my life is super cool, I have to believe it.
The other thing is, I want to talk about value and meaning in the universe in a very grandiose way, and try to get you to think about worthwhileness of all this that's going on in a kind of a lump sum manner.
Yeah, well, whatever. What does that even mean? The worthwhileness in a lump sum manner. There's no such thing. You have to agree on the value equation first. So there is, you're not gonna. I think you can understand. I have made it as clear as I possibly can. I think most of our gratifications come from the creation of a deficit in us. Okay, basically, our arm is ripped off, and we spend our life chasing our arm. We're like the no-headed horseman, right? And he just goes chasing his fucking pumpkin head or whatever. All right, that's what life basically is. All right, no matter, it's always pulling little pieces out of you, and you go out, chase them to try to put yourself back together again. Humpty Dumpty kind of a thing, or whatever the scenario would be. So our gratifications are mostly the eliminations of burdens, our holes, our emptinesses, our detractions, our subtractions from us. And it's all we get gratified when we relieve ourselves of fear, or angst, or worry, or threat, or some other negative fucking thing. So that there isn't even a positive in the positive. The positive is just the release of a negative. So even that, by that math alone, you're already fucked. And that's without adding the extra burden of the real negatives, which are the horrible sensations and conscious conditions and outrageous pain sensations that people must endure to play this stupid game. So you have absolutely no accomplishment besides cleaning up this part of the mess. And you're going to experience, without any way to avoid it, some other section of mess, because life is just fucking messy, and then you die. So there's just no thing here. There's no economics. There's no value equation, because you can't even find anything of real value here. It is all just a big bag of shit. We're completely manipulated and owned by a fucking DNA molecule that has designed us to chase crap.
We come out on top at the end of the game when all of time has ran its course and there's nothing left.
Oh, yeah, again, describe to me what on top is. You know, what? Because I'm going to argue to you, if you want on topness, you just make people dumber and dumber and dumber and make their joys sillier and sillier and sillier. I mean, you can get a retarded person to literally wet their pants in joy. You can do that. Okay, with something preposterous, 5 cents of something. It doesn't even have to be worth 5 fucking cents. And you know it. Alright, so it's all about this bliss of being a moron. Alright, so maybe you want to play the bliss of being a moron game. Personally, no. No thank you. I'm saying quite emphatically, I don't want to come back here. I don't ever want to see this idiotic, moronic game again.
There's nothing left to move, there's nothing left to change, everything is up. If we come out of that on top, where more pleasure has been experienced than more pain, I don't even think Gary could disagree.
Well, exactly. So explain how you derive this pleasure, because the only way I understand how you derive pleasure is through want, through hunger. It's okay, you create a big giant hunger, like starving in the desert for, you know, and then you get the glass of water, and it's the most magnificent thing in the world. You spend 10 years in prison, and you get out, and there's, you know, 25-year-old babe waiting for you. Yeah, I mean, there's moments that you'll be, oh, that's going to be so fucking good. And why is it good? That's right, because the deprivation was hard. So the harder the deprivation, the better the undeprivation.
With me when I say that it would all be worth it. Okay.
And again, that's your equation, and you're entitled to it. And if there's some way we could morph my psychology, all the psychology saying, don't put me on this ride again, don't fucking sign me up for this shit, you ass fuckers, then fine. I mean, if I could morph my psychology into your psychology, so it's only your kids you're putting on the roller coaster, they're only human beings that are going to turn out to be you in the end, then I'd say, go ahead, you sadistic motherfucking lunatics, torture yourself for an eternity. But that's not what you're doing. You ignorant motherfucking cunts with your silly aspirations and sense of accomplishment are dragging rational, sensible people and forcing them to get in your rickety, insane, stupid, crap house. You're forcing rational people to live in your mud hut in a hurricane season.
I've talked about this before. I've tried to stretch Gary's scope of time here to have him look into the future and to consider hypotheticals. To him, this is phantasmagorical, whatever.
Yeah, no, to me, the burden is on you, okay? We have a ton of scientifically based, anyway, sci-fi stories about possible futures. You point to me to one that doesn't have, that only survives as a plausible theory because of some implausible premise from which it's based. Okay, you describe to me the perfect future that we have some realistic prospect of ever getting to.
Whatever he wants to do, but this, to me, this is entirely, the entire debate hinges on this point. Gary has came to all these conclusions through empirical means. He talks about facts, he talks about science, he talks about things that come from the analytic school of philosophy. He is talking about conditions of life that we as human beings, as a human species, have observed over maximum of 2,000 years of written language. That is the longest we have ever been.
Well, I don't even know if that's true, but look, I don't even care about the 2,000-year thing. Just go back to the discoveries of the last 150, 200 years are the ones that matter. Darwin, Einstein, yeah, that's pretty much all you need.
Sharing information across generations, unless you take oral learning into account. And even then, it's been in crude form. So we've only been learning about the universe and collecting data for about 2,000 years.
Yeah, right. And through that, we've, we have giant metal things flying through the sky. We've landed on the moon. We did the space thing and found out, well, there's not much you can do up there, but we did it successfully. We shot little humans all over the fucking place, blah, 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 relatively successfully. All right, so we have demonstrated some mastery of this understanding. And so you're going to tell me that there's some mysteries to be revealed yet? I don't think so. You really think there is? They didn't even have any of those in Buck Rogers. They couldn't even imagine any mysteries. I mean, Buck Rogers was basically just trying to get laid like everybody else. He wasn't going anywhere else. He wasn't doing anything else. So this is just bullshit. There's a ton of Star Trek episodes. Did they ever come up with an episode where you say, "Oh yeah, that's a plausible thing"? None of it's ever made any sense. You have like some kind of super intelligent planet, but they're all neurotic as hell. They've never been able to do anything that was cogent with any kind of new possibility of a new information that would reveal something of any interest whatsoever. We've got the big facts. We know where we came from. We know our origins. Consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. There's not going to be anything else. That's it. It's a four-finger job.
You start at when writing has been available. It's only been about 200 years since proper scientific data, this kind of empirical world that Gary put so much faith in, has been around.
Again, what are you gonna do? Like I said, what the fuck are you gonna come up with? A nuclear dildo? I mean, it really doesn't matter, does it? I mean, will that really solve the human problem? We'll just nuke the dildos?
Okay, he draws these conclusions about the balance of suffering and pleasure based off of what we know about evolution. Okay? And I am completely on his side when he says things like, most life on Earth suffers, it dies, it's shit, it gets turned into dust, and it's not worth it. There's been more pain than there has been pleasure. But for me, it's as if he's accepting that at this point, since it's been mostly suffering, that the gig should be up. We should stop procreating right now because there's nothing left. Because all we've seen so far is suffering. And for me, that's saying okay, we end it now. Time ends now. And we calculate this lump sum. We come out on bottom. There's been more suffering up to this point. And if we cut it off now, which Gary's proposing to do, he's an anti-natalist. He does not want people to have more babies. He wants to destroy what we have.
So his argument is basically that we could build like bliss machines, right? And then we could all live in the bliss machine. And then if we had enough years in the bliss machine, that would solve our problem, because now the math would make sense, because we just bliss for like 10,000 years, and then we could put a big pile of bliss, and then we could just sit there and transfer that into the math and say the Holocaust was worth it now because we did 10,000 years of bliss. Well, first off, it doesn't do any good. Bliss over here doesn't solve suffering over here. You can't do that kind of bullshit. You can't fix somebody else's pain with your gain. And especially if your gain is made out of creating a false deprivation for you to have a sense of gain. All you do is push the person into the negative side of the scale, compress the negative spring, so you have this illusion of forward motion. But you're not making any true forward motion, and you're certainly not making any forward motion ever capable of compensating for that hard suffering that took place. Not one little drop of it, I would argue. You're not going to fix one victim of the Holocaust with your bliss machines, let alone 6 million victims. So that's going to fail all over the fucking place. You're just not getting the dynamic I'm describing, and maybe you need to dissect what I base it on and do that accurately without doing silly things like saying I'm against sex when I'm against procreation.
Alright, well we end it now, and there's nothing left. Okay? My proposition, as someone who's not an antinatalist, is to continue going on. Because I have this ability to imagine. I have this ability to imagine a universe where we are not straddled to this genetic genome, this pattern of chemicals that seems to reproduce itself. I imagine worlds.
Yeah, I imagine a world where there's peace in the Middle East, and where human beings organize themselves and do things the right way and the responsible way, and they don't Fukushima themselves, and they don't have a nuclear war, and they don't have World War III, and they don't do this, and they don't do that, and they don't exploit each other, and they don't fucking screw the pooch to pieces. Fine, great. You're not going to get there, and that doesn't solve any of that natural environment problem. It doesn't do much for the baby elephant that's going to be eaten alive tomorrow.
Where biochemistry isn't the defining force. I imagine worlds where we have skewed biochemistry in ways that actually make it so that most life can enjoy itself. I play around with ideas of melding forms of mechanical thought with organic thought to create something completely different. For him, this is unicorn talk. This is rosy red balloons floating away at a carnival. But for me,
yeah, it's pink frosting on yellow donuts. It's bullshit. That's right. Yeah, it's just contriving an excuse. It's glorifying another mountain of absolute bullshit. Let's make pink